work that time, I'll just probably say forget it. Um, I have 2 full days left over here, and then I'll probably be heading back. So it's been a interesting visit. I have to say that I don't even know what just happened. It said that I was like 20 seconds in, then it went to saying five. So now, whenever like you watch this stream, it's probably just gonna start with me just randomly being in the middle of a sentence. The internet can be really weird sometimes. But yeah, well, it's been a really exhilarating last few days. I had this. I mentioned on the stream I did on Saturday. I had this rental car, and I used that to like get around. I was taking these freeways, and yesterday I actually went on the freeway for about in total like 3 hours. It was supposed to be two, but there was a bunch of traffic that just kind of made everything harder to progress, I should say. So when I arrived in my location, I was very tired because I had to get up, get out, and like walk around, and it's like further strain. I had this joke with my friend that I got two states for the price of one because of how close Georgia and Alabama are to each other. I said last stream that I probably would go to Georgia separately again at some point in the future, and then like if I drive to another state, it would probably be South Carolina, just because I have so many relatives that are from there. Really, this time I had to kind of persuade myself not to go to Mississippi, where it's a pretty similar situation over there too. Um, because like I said, I'd rather actually spend time there. I didn't really spend time in Georgia. I was there for their the plane ride when I had the layover, and then going over to the Carter Library. So it wasn't like I was just in the state looking around, checking out stuff, which is something I'd like to do at another point. Although it probably wouldn't be the next trip I would have. I don't know. I have really mixed feelings about this because on one hand, getting on a plane and seeing different types of people and just the experience, I could say was a nice um, variance from the usual mundane activities. But there is also a thing where it's like, wow, I'm really not around any of my favorite characters. They're all in California, and even though I can call them and I do call them, it's just sort of this like a bubble, I guess I could say. Although I have enjoyed the fact that you can go outside and know you're not going to see any of the obnoxious individuals from there. It's been very liberating in its own way. I don't even think I mentioned, but when I was, I guess, going through the airport and just sort of getting situated, I ran into this employee and we like they were I guess trying to assist me, and we looked at each other, and then he recognized me as I him as someone who attended 12th grade with him. And it was really crazy that that's actually the second student from there that I've seen in the last I guess 6 or 7 months. There was another one that worked at some retailer who was I remember in a grade below me. He didn't recognize me, but I could tell it was him. We're having all these reunions. It's like, hey, remember that person? Yeah, I recall. No, I tried to get up and stream a little bit earlier, but I just couldn't do it. This actually is technically early for me because Pacific Standard Time, it's like going on to 9 o'clock, which is still sooner than I usually do. I usually would start at 10 o'clock at that time, so it's like almost 11 over here. But it's hard to get used to a different time zone. It really is. Because, like I said, my computer keeps reminding me with the fact that the time didn't change by itself of what time it is over there, which is useful for me because I don't want to get into a situation where I call somebody and it's really early for them, or it's like going on early afternoon for me. So that's one of the reasons why I keep it like that, just to kind of keep reminding myself, hey, it's this time for this person, this time for you. So yeah, it's one of those things where it serves a purpose, even if it can be confusing. I still mostly am adjusted to this time as far as I can look on my phone. It tells me the time, or another device. But I'm not going to pretend that it's not. It doesn't sometimes get a little strange. I feel like every time I do a stream, there's always that one person that just shows up and they start writing all types of crazy things. It seems to be a time honored tradition. Yeah, I really wanted to finish that one video, and I'm trying to do it tonight. It's just every time I think I'm almost done with it, there's like another piece or nugget that I want to stick in there. It's like, oh, I almost forgot this. So it will be finished at some point this week. I can promise that. It's near completion. I recorded pretty much the whole thing. I just have to make the actual editing, and that'll be it. And like I said, I knew when I came over here, I wasn't just going to be sitting in front of my computer all day. Um, so that's one of the reasons there's been that delay, kind of like my flight, where it's like, come at 12:20. And I'm like, okay. And about 5 hours before, they're like, no, come at 1 uh 30. It's like, okay. No, come 2 hours early. Okay. All right. And end up being like 4 hours early instead. Yeah, this person was getting on my nerves. They were like, you need to make sure that you put everything back in there the way I had it before. You won't be able to fit it. I'm like, well, hell, we wouldn't even have this problem if you hadn't have packed all this stuff. So, it's just one of those things where I just roll my eyes. Like, man, this wouldn't even be an issue if I had done this. But see, I let the fact that they were aware of how this was done and I wasn't dictate. It's one of those things where if you don't know how to do something and there's someone who you think knows how to do it, very likely you'll defer to them. You'll be like, all right, what do I do here? So, like the overpacking of the bag was caused by that factor that they purported themselves as knowing how this was done, and then pretty much took advantage of my ignorance at that time to be able to tell me what to do and point a finger and whatnot. Yeah, I might take one more trip to Georgia because I only have one more thing I want to see over here, and that's the 16th Street Baptist Church, and I guess that's relatively close by. And I guess while I'm out doing that, I can take some pictures of the different houses and how they vary in quality. And after that, there really is nothing else left to, I guess, explore other than going back to see something else. Like, I really did enjoy going to that library. It was fun, seeing all the memorabilia. I think I said before, I wish more historical figures, especially like the recently living ones, like ones from, like 60s, 70s, 80s. I wish more of them had, like buildings that commemorated their life where they have, different outfits they wore, documents, etc. Because you really, there's so much inherent value in here is everything on this major person that we were able to collect, to gather, preserve. You just don't see that with many people who would be very interesting to have that of, which I think is very sad. I don't know. I guess it's just me being sentimental, where I'd like to see more preserving of things that actually, matter to someone. This person said that I guess the plane is going to go to Charlotte at some point for about 2 hours, and I was like, that's kind of unfortunate because if it were, um, let's say in Wingate, I probably would go to the Helms Center, which has a pretty similar purpose, where it's like all his documents and memorabilia, and they have a little replica of his Senate office. But again, if I don't have a rental car to like drive me from place to place, I'm not going to bother because it's just too far of a walk. Like I can't guarantee I'll be back by the time that the plane is ready. So I'd rather just sit in the lobby or sit, in that general area. For me, getting on two planes is just. Let's just say next time I go somewhere, I'm gonna make sure it's a one flight deal, and no go there and then go there. Because I'm telling you, people really did not explain what that situation was. Like, I got off the first plane, I was so confused. It's like, okay, I know the second one is somewhere around here. It didn't say what the gate number was, but then when I looked on the, I guess it was their itinerary, and it showed, where the flight was. I was like, okay, it's that one. Then, looking around the whole area for where the gate was, that's one of those things where I wish people were better at explaining things. Because even when I asked the person that worked there, how do you get to this location? Oh, you have to ride the train. And then it turned out, no, you didn't. I just walked further down and there it was. So there's a lot of, if not misinformation, then stuff isn't really conveyed as clearly as it should be. And that can be very dangerous because, if I wasn't as, I guess, assertive with, hey, I think this over here, like kind of following my hunches a little bit, I could end up missing my flight. That stuff is really disturbing to me. That's why I said if I do this again, I'm gonna try to not have it to where it's just me alone. Because I think you're a lot more susceptible to get lost or get in some kind of peril if you're by yourself in an area where you don't know people. Because for me anyway, it's mostly just been I see a location, I like it, and then I go there and do whatever I want to do there and then leave. Um, if I get some food, I just get the food and go. If I go to some historical site, I just take some pictures and go record something and go. But with a lot of other people, they might be tempted to sit around. I had one, I had the one relative ask me, did you make any friends? It's like that wasn't the point of coming out here. People always think that everything is tied to the same old crap. It's really, really sad. Yeah, it was really unfortunate that the trip to the Carter Center was under these circumstances because I would have definitely brought back some more stuff with me if I didn't have to worry about the suitcase being jam packed with a bunch of stuff already. It's one of those things where it's just kind of annoying. But yeah, next time I go somewhere, it'll probably be the earliest I would say is over the summer. But it all just depends on like what the deal is with these employers. Like if I'm working somewhere between April and then I might not do it. But my luck with these employers has been so bad to where I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely not gonna have a job by June. Like it's just you're just so pessimistic about it where you just expect for them to, not even bother keeping you on for longer than a few weeks. But yeah, next one I go to would probably be somewhere like either maybe Texas or Florida. It's gonna be one of the bigger states, most certainly. I really did have to had to like will myself not to have the temptation to just turn this into a just a complete road trip where I drive for I don't know how many hours it would be, but to like Florida because that's underneath Alabama, or to the side to Mississippi or further up to Tennessee. Because Tennessee's another one that I wouldn't mind going to since they have the Lorraine Motel there. I think I said before with streams, it's usually the internet acts up or the people don't show up. Like either you're having some technical difficulties or you're having some difficulties getting people to say anything. I mean, whatever. It's just it is what it is. That's always one of the crucibles of streaming that you have to worry about. Oh man, are people going to show up? Are they going to watch? I don't know. It's a real mystery. It's just that with me, for someone who's done this for so long, I can't really say I'm surprised because I really did conclude you could have the most varied or interesting topic and still nobody would even show up. It is what it is. Although I will say it does kind of become a little demoralizing, just because you have like a dedication to doing it a certain time or certain day, and then people don't appear, and you're like, oh well, that's how my commitment was rewarded. I don't know. It's just not too surprising at this point. Yeah, there's hardly anything that's really shocking anymore. Just like when I went to what was that Greenwood Cemetery yesterday, I was not at all surprised that there were so few people there. Not even like five people were there. And I guess for me, I because my friend he tried to say when I mentioned like how I went to the Carter Center or Carter Library, there weren't that many people there. Oh, maybe it's because the people that live there are more likely to have gone multiple times. It's like, I guess, but it was a Saturday. Like if it's a Monday through Friday and people are working, like that's what the surmising I would do of like they're probably working, they can't come. But if it's the weekend, you would think you would see a much higher turnout, and instead it's like 10 people, 11 people. Because really, for me, none of the libraries are close. Even the ones, even the two in my state. It's like I'd have to go to Yorba Linda or Simi Valley, and both of those are relatively long drives. So that's a big part of like what causes me not to go regularly. But for many people who are around those things, they just don't care. They're just like, whatever. It's like, oh, look, they have this library with all these historical artifacts. Okay, whatever. Yeah, people do not care. Oh, man. I'd say the worst part about this room's been the TV. It just plays random films, like just a completely random assortment. And out of all the movies it's played, I've only recognized like two of them. One of them had Clint Eastwood in it, but I don't know what film that is. It looks like it's from the 70s, 80s. Problem is I haven't seen that much stuff with him in there, so it's harder to, make out what specific thing it could be from that alone. Yeah, it's been a really, really eventful couple of days. And I'm telling you, when I was on that freeway, I want to say I felt a pain in my back, but it was just, all the jerking of the car and moving around. And, it does kind of wear you down a little bit. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that when I went to the cemetery, I did walk around quite a bit. 'Cause I was looking for, multiple, I guess, famous graves. I could not find Jay Lister Hill. I didn't know where he was. I looked on Google, and it's like a big stone that has the name Hill written on it, and I just couldn't find it. I didn't search every single part of there, but I looked for a while, and I just couldn't figure out where it was. There's even somebody else with that same last name, and I thought for a second that that was him, but then it was another person. No, I tried as hard as I could to find it. I looked and searched every corner and crevice, and I just couldn't figure out where it was. It's really unfortunate, but I tried. I don't know where that thing was. I have to say the biggest problem for me with trying to take pictures of this stuff is that if I'm driving, it's harder to just pull out my phone and snap something, and I do feel kind of weird standing in front of a house and taking a picture of it. It's just one of those things where it's like it's a trade-off. You either have the car, but you can't sit still unless you park somewhere, or you get out the car and go up somewhere and like risk a person coming out and be like, "What are you doing? Why are you taking pictures of this?" Even though, like I said, some of these houses do look abandoned, but still, gotta tell you, my favorite part has definitely been the roads. It's been really nice not having as many people on them, and I like how direct a lot of them are, where it's just you go left or right. They have one road where there's so few people that drive down it that I was able to like park for not park, but just kind of stop for a second, and there was just no car that came for. So, and it wasn't even like, oh, it's during like late night or something. Just during the day, not that many people drive down that road. So it was pretty nice. Oh, what else is there for me to see? I really can't think of much. Um, I'm trying to remember if there's any other cemeteries where there's like a major person buried out here. I don't think so. No, there's a whole bunch of them probably in Georgia. I don't even have to rattle off the names. There's you'd probably be there all day just going to cemeteries if you tried to see all the famous ones out there. I did contemplate going to the King Center, but I really was tired after that drive, so I just went back. Um, I know Abernathy is buried out there, not at the King Center, but just in that same area. But, it's nice to go to those and just kind of, you know, even for like a second, I guess, pay your respect. It's nice that there's at least this little stone that acknowledges that someone was here. Because some people don't have that with those cremations where they just there's nothing. There's a urn that's not available to the public. So just a really it's kind of sad just that like so few people ever get multiple like things in remembrance of them. It doesn't even have to be a grave. It could be something like, oh, this person drew a picture of this person or they named this building after them. And we've discussed before that a lot of people will go to a building with someone's name on it for literal years and have no idea who that person is or was. I say is because sometimes buildings are named after living people. I think that's really sad because it's counterintuitive to the whole point of naming it after him. It's like, hey, here's this building that's named after this person that we don't remember. I think I said before. I remember when I was in either it must have been ninth or 10th grade. It was definitely one of those 2 years. But I remember when I was in ninth or 10th grade, my grandmother drove me to it wasn't there anymore, but where the Ambassador Hotel used to be, and it's so interesting that that building it had this presidential candidate get murdered there, and then for over 30 years it just sat there empty until it was finally torn down in the early 2000s and replaced with a school. So for well over a quarter century, it just stood there as this lifeless but still tragic remembrance to something that happened before finally being replaced for a purpose that actually benefits people. Oh man, yeah, this time zone is definitely something I will not miss. I still think it's weird that here in Georgia are so close to each other and they have a different time zone. Off by 1 hour. I guess that's weird to me because I would think since they're so close they wouldn't, but I'm not going to tell you I'm some expert on time zone. I was just kind of shocked that you could go somewhere like that and one place has it to where it's 9 o'clock, another one has it to where it's 10 o'clock. And I was really confused as to, like, I think I said before, when I was driving over there, it told me I was going to arrive. It was 9 o'clock. It said you'll arrive at 12 something in 2 hours. Like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then it explained the time zones. And sure enough, the second I crossed state lines, it switched over, which was really interesting. As far as I didn't expect it to just automatically, adjust itself that way. Yeah, somebody made a really stupid video that I feel like talking about. Don't know if I want to give him the oxygen. I don't know. Fame is just a really subjective thing. Because, like I said, we as a society pick and choose who we want to discuss and talk about and remember and commemorate, and bring up over and over again. So this here and be like, well, I know that by the end of this election season, 150 million people won't know who this person is. It's like, yeah, but you're not doing anything to make it to where they know who that person is. And it's just, it was just a stupid video. That's all it was. My rebuttal should have been, you have 1 million subscribers. I bet 150,000 of them will never, which isn't even what, a fifth of them will even see this video. That's how few actually watch your channel. Only time he gets views is when he stalks the same person over and over and over and over and over again. So they drive me crazy with this stuff. Like, but there's a lot of like really dumb political videos. I'm having a hard time like picking and choosing which ones to respond to because I was it must have been yesterday that Ruben uploaded his interview with Haley. And at some point during the interview, I can recall that he's like, 'cause, his whole shtick is that he's, like this anti woke person, like that's his entire personality, and he doesn't really push back on anything that the people he's interviewing says. In a lot of cases, just doesn't try to actually challenge them in any capacity. I said it's really crazy that he does this interview and he says something to the effect of we weren't in this, or like it was something that I could have sworn was factually incorrect. But again, it's a video that is like 50 minutes long, so I'd have to go through and pick out that part. And then if you respond to that part, people are going to say you're just selective with what you choose to have outreach, or they're going to be like you're like cutting them up or whatever. Really, it all just comes down to I don't have the like time to take a video that's almost an hour long and then cut out each piece and respond to each separate segment, because like a lot of the stuff that's said there is repeats of what you've heard before. And that's actually a conversation that me and another person had, which is that a lot of these politicians that repeat themselves tend to be 50 plus. Like they're people who, when they first ran back in like 2000 or at the latest, they were used to this idea that they could go into a room of like 100 people or 60 people and say something, and then go to like another group of 100 or 200 and say the exact same thing, and nobody would ever notice that they just spend the entire campaign repeating themselves. And it's not even like they're repeating something interesting, like, hey, we have 63% of Americans a paycheck to paycheck, we need to discuss wage increases and address why these jobs aren't making it to where they can actually support themselves. Nothing like that. It's stupid stuff. This is why we need congressional term limits that are never going to pass, because members of Congress would never vote to limit the number of years they can serve because it's against their own self-interest. And we also need mandatory mental health competency checks on politicians over 75. And it's like, are you serious? This is what you choose to base your whole existence in this race on? Oh, and then when they actually do propose something, it's always unpopular. Like, hey, let's have entitlement reform and make it to where you have to work until you're 80 or 85 to get any social security benefits. Yeah. And she has that same stupid line of Republicans have lost the popular vote in the last 7 out of 8 presidential elections. I'm like, well, hell, if you campaign as the anti everybody candidate who's against raising wages, what do you what do you expect to see happen? That's what kills me. Like, it's not, someone who says a line like that, you're thinking, oh man, they're going to make a big change and they're going to be different from the people that ran before. But really, her entire change has to do with her gender and supposed youthfulness. I say supposed because that's something we've seen a million times before, and it's like, that's sad that your whole supposed claim to not being the same as what's come before is, oh, look at the way I look. I don't look I don't look like these other people. It's like, yeah, but you still believe the same stuff and parrot the same crap. So what difference are we actually getting? And the answer is not. Yeah, she has the nerve to keep saying we've lost 7 out of the last 8 presidential. It's like, yeah, because you're running on issues that are not popular with people. Your whole strategy is, okay, we're never going to be able to get most voters to like our positions because they're trash. So our positions are. So let's do this game where we win X number of states, or we win these particular states. They know what they're doing. They know nobody hears, hey, let's make it to where you have to work until you're 75 or 80 or 85 or 90, and is excited about that. Dude, there's some other segment in that very long interview with Ruben where she's like, um, she said something about like issues with welfare, and at one point she's like talking trash about food stamps. And I'm like, well, you're the same bastard who's against a minimum wage increase or wage increases in general. So you're shocked that people have to use food stamps to be able to afford getting food after barely making any money from their job that underpays them. We have to go after DC for its spending problem. It's like, okay, all right. And of course, when she says that, she's not talking about, hey, let's reduce the military budget, let's end these 5 illegal wars that we have going on. Nope. It's always messing with social programs for the poor every time. I'm telling you, these people just they don't even try to like appear as if they're populist. I said before that I really think politics at its heart is supposed to be about people wanting to win an election because they want to help their constituents, but I don't really see anyone in this race other than Williamson that really seems as if they're trying to do something to benefit people. Because with Haley and with the other two, it's just it feels like you have no particular issue that's actually valuable or that is something exclusive to you that's appealing. So you just get caught up on all this stupid stuff about your age and your gender and your backstory, and it's vapid. It's just a lifeless husk of a campaign, like masquerading as if it's a serious change and transformation of the system, but it really isn't. And like I said with Williamson, I'll probably make another video about her over the next few days. I think I mentioned I could have gone to one of her events in South Carolina, like driven over there, but I just didn't feel like it because I'd have to get up really early and pay for some tickets, which, if I'm going to pay for any tickets, I'd rather it be somewhere close by. I think she will eventually come back to California, which, if I remember correctly, that's her home state. So she'll definitely do something over there, and then I'll drive to that instead. It's not an easy thing for me to like get up and physically go see a candidate in person. So uh, that's definitely something I would be up for doing. I remember I went to two Sanders events, even without having a car. But that was because he was exciting. Same thing with Williamson. And it's like I don't see that with any of the other people in this race. Like they're just these really substanceless um, waste of space, I guess I could say. And Haley gets more and more disappointing because that's someone who I said before, there was a really specific lane that she could have occupied as a supposed moderate. And what that means is that she really is not moderate in the slightest, but she at least, if she had avoided talking about woke and any of the rest of the stuff that the other two like to use, she could have at the very least pretended to be more in the middle. But it's like you have these advisors and the instincts that are just off. Like that's why a lot of people are saying the race is really her trying to be the VP, and I don't dispute that at all. 'Cause there just seems to be a lack of an actual desire to you know be something different. Be something different as far as substance is concerned, like stuff that you can't control, like your gender and age is what she claims is all new generation of leadership. It's like, yeah, but what's the point of a new generation if it's the same old trash? But I made that point before. I said, what, like, I've talked about wanting to run for the House in my congressional district, and it's like, at the very least, if I did that, I would make it very clear, hey, look, I'm not an insider. I don't have any special interest. The people I represent are the members of the district. You would explain to them, hey, look, this is why I'm running. I believe in these certain things. I don't think the person we have now, even if they say they're for these things, is fighting for them. They've even said in interviews that they're just here to get along, or they're just trying to make friends. I said before that Washington and just in being an elected official, it should not be about who you're buddies with. Your buddies should be the damn people that voted you in, that expect you to do everything in your power to represent them. I really hope this congressman likes me. I mean, it really feels like something out of a high school almost, or heck, even a middle school or preschool. I'm one of the most powerful people in the whole United States, but don't count on me to do anything because I want to make sure I keep my friends. That's a really sad doctrine for any person to have. Is like I really I lose all respect for politicians that say things like that because that are potentially costing of political support both by the public and by uh, other people who are elected, and knowing that what you're doing is right. So when you sit there and you're like, I'm afraid that I might upset somebody, it's like you really don't even you don't need to be here. Like again, look at Haley. Won't critique, even though she's been attacked by him. Won't say a single negative word about Trump. And it's like, how are you running for president? You want to be the leader of the free world, and you don't even have the goal to say anything bad about your boss who has spoken your former boss who has spoken disparagingly of you. That's why I said we really there's such an absence of leadership. Like not even just in the political realm, but just in general. Like I'm seeing more and more things where it's like people are afraid to take a stand on even the most minute of stuff, you know? Like it really does feel like someone is always afraid, you know, oh, if I do this, people won't like me. It's like, yeah, but that you're not supposed to do things, especially as an adult, that you know, everything you do has to be curated so that a random group of people who in most instances do nothing for you approves of it. So yeah, this is the absence of leadership era where people are too scared to ever take a stand or for anything or on anything, which is really, really sad. Because like I said, these people want to be in charge of you. They want to represent you. And they're too afraid to even remotely show any kind of courage or confidence. But yeah, going to Greenwood was pretty surreal. I mean, when I drove in there, I had no idea where anything was. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just park and look around for a bit. And I was like, I can't find what I'm looking for. And all of a sudden, when I went on Google, it became very clear where it was. And I started going up that hill and I saw that giant stone hedge that said Wallace. I looked down and I saw the former governor's grave and it had the years ingrained on it. I took a picture and got a little video of me going up the hill. And both in the picture and the video, you can see where somebody left some campaign buttons of his on the bottom corner of the grave, which I thought was really, I mean, nice because it's like there are people who you know remember uh, him. So it was interesting to see that on there. I was like, I think he might be the only person out of any elected Democrat that like ran for president for like four and didn't win for like four consecutive elections in a row. Like that has to be some kind of record. 64, 68, 72, and 76. I also like that on his grave they have the years ingrained of him being governor because he's one of the longest serving governors in American history. He had four terms. So it was just a really nice looking little stone. They had his wife there as well. Uh, was that Lorleen, I think? And it's kind of interesting because for the longest time, she was the Bentley, acted like an idiot and had some affair with some staffer of his and got recorded using was it using official state funds to go and fly her around with their little nasty escapades. But yeah, while I was over here, I had to make sure I saw the grave of the most famous governor from this state. And like I said, I looked and looked and looked, and I could not find Hill. I mean, I must have walked around, if not the entire cemetery, then at least a solid 75% of it. It was crazy. It's like, where is this thing? I looked and looked. I couldn't find it. I feel like I should sing a certain Linkin Park song. You know, I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter. I mean, I wasn't. You know, I can live without seeing his because when I think of Alabama politics, first person I immediately think of is Wallace. Um, for I guess I could say obvious reasons. I mean, he's really the only person from this state that ran for president, had like a somewhat decent chance of winning, or even like at all. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else that was governor or senator that ran that was from here. But yeah, if I'm not thinking of him, I'm thinking of probably Sessions or who else? Maybe Shelby. But that still is slanted toward recentism, you know. Yeah, he was a very interesting figure in American history for the 60s and 70s. Because really, a lot of the anti integration, I guess, legacy that this state has is tied to when he was governor. One other thing I was thinking of doing was going to the University of Alabama and taking a picture of the doorway that he stood in to prevent the two students from going in. But I don't have anyone to take the image for me of me there, so I just said forget. I feel like going somewhere like that where there's more likely to be people there during the day, kind of, I don't know, it just makes me feel less comfortable. Um, so I probably won't do that. But I'm definitely going to Baptist church, that's for sure. I'm trying to think what other governor really has been notable from here besides him. It's a hard thought to think of. I know at one point, the one before Bentley, Bob Riley, they were talking about him running for president, but he didn't. It's crazy that somebody can be governor of a state for 8 years and you can know almost nothing about them. There's no books written about them. You know, you might be able to dig up some old news articles, but as far as like an actual scholar from the state sitting down and going, okay, here's the story of this guy, and here's why he was, you know, a memorable governor, good one, bad one, whatever. It's crazy that like the only one anyone from out of this state seems to care about is Wallace. All these years later, I can't think of any of his successors or even predecessors that have anywhere near the same level of historical interest that he does, which is kind of sad because I'm always a fan of people discussing historical figures, and even a lot of the more recent serving ones, like they're alive and people don't really seem to pay any attention to them. But that kind of that sort of reminds me of how it was with the California governors, where it's like besides Reagan and to a lesser extent the Browns, so Pat Brown and Jerry Brown, and I guess Earl Warren as well. Most of them are just kind of like they have their term, even if they're and maybe they run for president and get nowhere, and then that's it. I should take that back because when I think the more I think about it, we have like 5 governors that people, at least as things currently stand, have some significant level of interest in. We have Reagan for obvious reasons; people are interested in him. Um, both of the Browns, even if I do think Pat Brown isn't really talked about as much as he should because he did a lot of stuff for the state. Earl Warren for the Supreme Court Chief Justice, and Arnold. We had our second movie actor as governor. But that still means that all the other ones are just kind of like whatever. Like I don't hear anyone talking about Gray Davis or uh, Pete Wilson, or was it George how do you pronounce his last name? Dujakin. So it really is a thing of like some of them are remembered, but for the most part, it's just here's a person who has a job. And I started going down the list. I said with Texas, besides Bush, what governor from that state is really memorable? Like, actually, no, I take that back. Besides Bush, Connolly, and arguably Ann Richards, like which ones do I ever hear people talk about and mention and go, hey, that person, they were important. I can't think of any. You had Rick Perry, who thought he could be the second coming of Bush and run for president. He got nowhere, especially that second time. I think he was the first person to drop out. Um, and then I think Abbott's the one who said he doesn't want to run for president. So really, besides those three of Connolly, Richards, and Bush, I can't think of any governors from that state that people really talk about. Then you go to Florida. Like DeSantis is a hot commodity right now, but do I really think people are going to be talking about him in 20, 30, 40 years? Because like I said, what has he done to improve people's lives over there? What, you ban books? Like that's your big legislative victory? I said, who, let's see, over in Florida you've had I'd have to really think about it. The only one I can remember right now is Bush, Jeb. So it's like, and even then, the thing I most remember about him is that screwed up election down there in 2000. So really, who from there is going to be remembered? Like I know Rick Scott. He became a senator, but would I really say that's someone who people are going, oh, he was that very influential figure? Because I can't think of anything he passed. I know that they had a lot of mass shootings over there, and he just kind of sat around on his pen. and didn't, actually pass anything to try and curb it. Thoughts and prayers. I just find that really interesting that, like, if you go state to state, you can keep finding examples of there being maybe like 30, 40, 50, 60 governors, and it's like maybe 3, 4, or 5 of them are memorable. And it's not even just like, oh, it's you know, this small state that people don't really pay that much attention to, but even the big ones like California. Do I really think anyone's going to talk about Newsom after the next 10 years? I think he's going to be the Democratic version of Pete Wilson. He'll be someone who, after being governor, tries to run for either the Senate or probably president, because trying to become senator from California is not exactly the easiest thing in the world with these incumbents. But he'll be someone who runs for president and, let's say, gets maybe 10% of the vote in the primary and then drops out. And then again, he goes the way of Gray Davis and the rest of these forgotten governors as someone who tried to get a higher position or keep their current position, lost, and then just kind of disappeared into the background. The only ones from New York I can think of right now are, well, FDR, obviously, and then probably Kumo. And again, it's like these are the largest states, and they have so few people that have, represented them, that it's way easier for me to name senators. But I guess that's probably because I've always just been more into the Senate than into, um, you know, like the state legislator and the chief executive of the state. That's probably so that might be my own personal bias reflecting there. But I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm just thinking, like, who had this position and who's memorable for having it, who can I remember personally. But it really is true that, like, a lot of these states have extremely unremarkable people that are, like, in charge of them for 4 to 8 years, that once they're out of office, you never hear them about them again. You don't remember them. They're just like, whatever. I don't know, I just think that's really sad that, like, they're how unremarkable they are. It's like, oh my God, 5 million, or excuse me, 3 million people voted for this person to be the governor. I can't wait to see what extremely innovative things they decide to, and then there's nothing. Really unfortunate. Like I said, if in a perfect world, we would get historians to write books on all these different people, but instead they usually do the same couple of people over and over and over again. You'll get 500 books on the same American president before you get like two on a governor. It's so sad. It just shows you people don't care. God, I ate last night. Now I'm hungry again. That's the worst part about traveling to another state, because you can't take food with you on the plane. So anything you get down here, you have to eat it and finish it. And I really learned my lesson after, what was that, the night before last night, where I was like, it was like 3 in the morning and I was hungry and I couldn't find anywhere to eat that didn't have either a long line or some other crazy thing. So I just have to remind myself, when it gets to be about 4 or 5 o'clock, get enough stuff for the night, and that'll be it. But I've really been thrown off by not having Ralph's to go to. Like they have this one place called the Piggly Wiggly. I guess that's their Ralph's equivalent of a market with food in there. And maybe I'll go there today. I don't know. But I'm just kind of jaded, like as far as wanting to eat something, and then there's all these issues that come up. I'm trying to remind myself if Richard Russell was the. I know he was the senator after. I'm trying to see, make sure I don't get anything factually incorrect, because if I say something wrong about him, everybody's going to go down, jump down my throat. Yep, he was governor, only for 2 years, but still. It's kind of interesting just how out of any historical figure that I think is forgotten, he's probably the one I can make the easiest case. Like it's him and Polk that I can make the easiest case for why people should remember him. Just objective importance. Yeah, besides him and Carter, I can't think of any governor from Georgia that I'd really say was important. I'm sure I'm incorrect probably, but I'm just looking at the list. I don't really see anyone here that stands out. Because even with Kemp, it's like he's a guy who cheated um, Abrams out of that 2018 election, and then because we can't have anything nice, he defeated her pretty soundly the second time around. But do I think that's a guy that people are going to talk about in 20 years? No. That's why I said a lot of this stuff is just me trying to balance out recentism with like objective historical importance. Like, hey, this person was the first governor that did this. I don't see any of the current ones really being remotely influential, like people that you're going to see talked about a long time from now. Because they don't even do anything. They just sit there and they pass some economic surplus budget that usually isn't even really helping anybody. They don't talk about labor, and if they do, it's usually some union busting initiative. And like I said, I wish we lived in a better country where people actually cared about workers. Because ideally, you would see not just state executives, but the state legislator trying to give people wage increases and trying to protect them from these very disgusting businesses that will get rid of them faster than you can say damn, with collective bargaining. But a lot of it is just completely ignoring people that are affected by our really garbage austerity economic system, or being outwardly antagonistic to them with the union busting. So one way or the other, you're just kind of left with a bunch of people that aren't really doing anything to help anybody. And it's really, really sad. God. Let me think, what other state did we not go over? We did California, Texas, New York, Florida, Georgia. Um, I think that's that. Well, I mean, obviously there's other ones, but oh, we did Alabama as well. It's so sad that like every time I go on Twitter and I type in anyone from like from here, like from Alabama that is remembered, it's always like you either hear something about Wallace or because there's like a for whatever reason this is a thing you hear about more. I said it's so crazy that he was famous for like nationwide famous for a month or maybe 2 months and people still bring him up every if not every day, every like other day on Twitter. But Wallace is so memorable that every single person that comes out of this state that is Republican is going to get compared to him. Every last one, which is really sad. Because, like I said, most of it is just people name calling. They're not really trying to address any issues or make anyone's life better. It's just, oh, this person reminds me of this other person. It's like, well, what did they do? Oh, they speak similarly to them. Or they're also from the party that I despise. Oh man, it has been a really I'm telling you, I tried to get up earlier. I really did, but the time zones and remembering what time is not easy. And sometimes you're just so tired, you just don't feel like it. I think I've mentioned I've had several days where it'll be like 3 in the morning over here, and I'm still up, and I'm like, oh, it's only. I don't feel tired. It's only 1 o'clock. Even the 1 hour difference in like Washington is still something that would take some getting used to. Especially if I lived out there, that would be gross. I'm like, oh yeah, this person's an hour behind me. Like I feel like you'd have to be there for a long time to really get used to it. But yeah, it is really sad that we have so many influential people that we just can't even work with. Like even if we're from their states, we just don't even know who they are. It's kind of crazy that like every like recently serving governor from California has run for president, and the only one that ever won ever was Reagan. And it's kind of funny too because when you have a state that is so blue or I guess left leaning now, and the only two libraries are for one Republican that was the epitome of conservatism, who actually nowadays is considered not as right wing as the rest of his party, and another one who was, I would say, more moderate and more so moderate, in fact, that Obama even admitted he's more right leaning than him. It's really funny. I said before, California's got the same problem as Illinois, where it's like if you removed one or two cities, it would be red. And a lot of people see it as this big liberal safe haven, but it's not really not. And it's been such a I don't know. It's always so intriguing when there's a stream and just nobody shows up. That's always the weirdest thing to me. But I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. even if I still am to an extent. Just because it's like we have all these. Well, I said that before that like most subs don't care. So it's like you could realistically have thousands or even hundreds of thousands of subs and nobody would show up, or like very few people, I should say. I said that before that I notice a lot of the channels I watch, even if they have a million subs, they very rarely do streams. Um, like besides Door, I can't think of any that actually just sit there and they do a live stream and they talk or whatever. That's a pretty rare thing at this point. Yeah, it's been a really eventful couple of days, a really interesting couple of days. It is kind of sad that like people they have perceptions of the South as this place where there's like a more of a kindness and um, I guess also to some extent or another there's a certain level of respect and people are more likely to adhere to values. But I'm telling you, as I've been walking around and or I guess just kind of observing things, I'm seeing so many factors and elements that remind me of California. I mean, like I've seen people they walk around pants hanging off or some tattoos, and I don't say anything 'cause it doesn't matter to me, but it's just kind of a thing where it's like that kind of stuff is supposedly the result of these liberal societies with no values, but then it's the same thing over here. There's been so many instances where it just seems as if things are nowhere near as well done as they should be. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of people hype up this like around here as this place of values and people having like they think differently, but I don't see it. I really don't. It feels like it's the same old. I'm not going to call it crap, but it doesn't seem as if there's a very large difference in the way that people act in my home state versus how they act here. And some movie just came on. It's rated R. Can't wait to see what this is. It'll be another unrecognizable film. Yeah, it's been a. I don't know. I talked before about like the freedom that I've been enjoying for the last few days, and it's small stuff, like being able to get up when you want to, being able to like close a door and not expect someone to just come in there and do something while you're asleep, or being able to go outside and know that you don't have to see any of these people that you sometimes run into that you don't really like necessarily. Those are all things I've been enjoying to to different degrees. Yeah, I'll admit I probably miscalculated when I was like, oh, I'm gonna stay here until next Friday because I really thought it would take a long time to see this stuff, but I realistically probably could have gone everywhere I wanted to in maybe a day or 2 days. Like there's even a small part of me that wants to go back to Georgia just to see the Carter Library again. Because it really was a nice looking building both inside and out. I wish more stuff like that was around. Wish we had more people that they did that for. But I said before that, things when they don't have a structure, they're not allowed to really like develop. So if you have a community that says, okay, we have these five, six people that were important to us, and we're gonna have buildings named after them, and in there they have all their papers and memorabilia and whatever. That's the kind of stuff that actually can be made to happen because there's a base of support behind doing it. Um, like a lot of the memorials to, again, different politicians, they don't just come out of nowhere. They're either government funded or there's a community effort to get that started. One way or the other, it happens, but it doesn't just appear out of the blue. I'm really surprised Arizona doesn't have something like that for McCain yet, because whether you like them or not, and I was certainly no voter of his. He probably was their most important political figure besides Goldwater. Ran for president twice, senator for over 30 years. Um, I would say that I think they probably should have something, some kind of library esque place for him. The crazy part is that you're more likely to see something for Goldwater, even though he didn't. He had one of like the worst performances out of any of the nominees from either major party. But he gave birth to conservatism. It's like, okay, but he still didn't, like, it's not even just not winning, it's like just he got wiped out, but okay. Yeah, getting people to show up to a stream is not easy. You can tell them what time it is, you can tell them, hey, we'll talk about this, and they just will not appear. It is what it is. I don't know, I don't expect today to be that event filled anyway, because it's just gonna mostly be me going to that church and then probably getting something to eat, and then that'll be it. That'll be the full catalog of events. So I'm not too disturbed, because at least when I did the stream on Saturday, that was after I'd come back from a 4-hour drive, and I was kind of tired. I was like, I have to do this anyway because I always say I'm going to do it on this particular day or whatever. But that's kind of interesting. You can stream on one day and get people to show up in another, and then it could be like one day later, 2 days later, just no one appears. People are really interesting in terms of when they're around and when they're not. I even had this one person who were like, "I'm sorry, I can't show up to every single show." It's like it's not about that. It's just sometimes it'd be nice if people appeared. But I said that before, that there's a big part of this stuff where just people sometimes show up, sometimes they don't. Sometime. So it's never too surprising when it doesn't work out. Oh man, I swear when you stay up in a hotel, you hear all kind of noises. Someone's like hitting up against something, another person is knocking on doors, another one's talking loud in the hallway. That's always to be expected. Because I mostly try to be quiet, or at least not too loud. Um, like even now, I'm not really speaking at some enormous volume. You probably would have to be close to the door to even be able to hear me. And I'm actually about as far from the door as I could even be, so it's even more, um, I guess, inconspicuous. know, I've been enjoying the rental car more than my own because it tells you how many miles it has left before it goes empty. So you never you can like properly calculate how long it'll take you to get to a gas station before it runs out. Um, my car has this thing where if I put the if like sometimes it doesn't connect when I try to put the internet in the for Google Maps. I don't know why. I really have no idea. It works when it wants to work, and that also means I really well. And sometimes it just randomly will come back, but then it'll go right back to being on there. So one way or the other, it's pretty decent. God, people are so weird. I really sit here sometimes just asking myself, what are they even doing? I saw this one movie, just kind of playing in the background. I started thinking it was from like the early 2000s. And then they have a scene where one of the characters is on Instagram. I guess that's more of a commentary on how the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like a lot of these styles of clothing and the way houses look and the cars that are being driven, all of it just feels like it's no different than you would have seen 10 or even like 15 or 20 years ago. It's you know, what I mean? Like it's all stuck in this collective capsule. That's why I said for me, it's so hard to take a lot of this stuff seriously because it just seems like there's no sense of growth or purpose to it. Like, you know, me coming out here, I came to see several historical monuments and sites, and I have seen most of them at this point. And of course, there's some stuff I still want to see, but I probably won't be able to. Um, so even when I go back, I can say, okay, well, I still got to see this. I still went there. I still did what I set out to do. In a case of a lot of people, and I was making this claim to my friend. I said when I was talking about how you know if I had somewhere like the Carter Library right next to my house, I'd be going up there probably every week because you know it's such a nice thing to see in the view. And he was saying, "Oh well, you know, people who live by there probably have seen it before." I'm like, "Yeah, but even if we were to take that into account, who's to say that all of the people that live there have even bothered going in the first place?" Um, that's why I pointed out that like I went on a weekend on a Saturday and like barely saw anybody in there. So what does that tell you about the day-to-day runnings of the operation? That there's probably not that many people that go. Like in fact, I would actually argue that tourists are more likely to enjoy the stuff than the people that live there because they're less likely to take it for granted. Like I said, Nixon Library is one I definitely want to head up to at some point. Maybe I'll do it um next week, week after that. Get on the freeway, and then from there, just you know, drive to Yorba Linda. Because I really want to see this stuff, you know. I said before that like I'm trying so hard to break out of the half alive nature of a lot of this stuff where I want to see things, I want to go places. Um, there's like certain books I want to read. You know, there's always something that I want to do and or you know learn about whatever. And it just feels like a lot of people have these like we had a conversation about how you have these guys where their whole thing is like everything they do is centered around getting with a woman. And I was like, you know, that's such a extremely like wasteful, just empty desire, you know, because there's billions of them, and you know, talk about we've explained before that like there's nothing about them as a group to where doing all this stuff for one of them even makes any sense. But it's like there's so much more stuff a person can do. For on Saturday, I've been out here for now 3 days, and I have not spoken to a single woman outside of when it was one that was running a business I was going into, um, like the person at the front desk, because they're that this they were never a part of my desire to go here. You know, there was I already said before, putting all this emphasis on these people is just it's really confusing to me. I don't know why anybody would even bother with. Let me see if I can scoot this down here. So really, for me, it's just a thing where they're kind of played out. They're just sort of like they exist. We see them. We acknowledge that they're a thing, but they're as far as like launching some shadow campaign to get one. I don't care. I do think it's really sad that so many people put this much emphasis on them, but we've discussed that before. There's there's a lot of stuff to be disappointed about with people, just the way they act, the way they treat others, certain situations that aren't exactly ideal. I think I've said before that I've been now to like three different cities to Birmingham, to Gallant, or I guess Gadsden, I should say, uh, and Montgomery, and like in every city except for Gadsden, which I don't even know what the ratio is of. But anyways, in each of these cities, I keep seeing some homeless person that's either sitting in front of a business or is like in the middle of the street begging for money. And it's like, they always talk about the homelessness in California, like as if they care, as if people are really upset at just all these homeless people being, nowhere to live, whatever. But then they can't even clean up their own backyard. And that's my thing, that like, don't sit here and play this game of trying to make it sound as if you care about destitute people, but then when it's in your own state, it's crickets. You hear nothing. I mean, how likely are you to see any politicians from this state talk about the homeless people here or about wage increases? You wouldn't. And it's really sad because people need as much help as they can get in a lot of cases, and they're not getting any from their government that's supposed to be representing them and assisting them. It's all really sad. But that's why I said I have a hard time believing that out of all the purposes that we as human beings have, we're just supposed to sit here and, we see some homeless people, maybe we give them $1 or whatever change we have in our pocket. And then, that person goes right back to being, destitute the next day. And, we feel good about ourselves because we gave them some coins. It just feels like all of it is so by the numbers, and it like no one is really being benefited here. And look, maybe I'm crazy for coming to these observations, but you just have to like there just doesn't seem to be any longevity to a lot of the proposals and things that people are doing or not doing to correct this problem. And it kind of drives me crazy because there's a lot of reason to get involved with helping them. And you might see like a good Samaritan who's like, oh, here's $1, here's a quarter, here's a nickel, here's a penny. But the actual elected officials really do like pretending that this stuff isn't happening. Because like I said, for most of them, it's just a job. You just whatever the hell for the next 2 to 6 years until you run for another term where you do barely anything at all, but not enough people vote to even make a difference. So that's why I said it's just really sad that like there's no desire among elected officials to actually benefit people in major ways. Like we were talking about the insulin bill, even something as minor as that, as far as like you're still gonna have to pay for this drug, but at the very least, it's gonna be lowered with its price by over a half. Even that wasn't able to pass. Even a bill like that wasn't able to make it because it's not like we're proposing single payer. You know, you're literally asking for a drug that cost more here than in many of the other developed countries to have its price reduced to where it's around the same amount that you would pay in other countries. And there's nothing. There's no attempt by any either lawmaker or political figure to really hammer this home. Like, yeah, these people voted down lowering drug prices. So they vote down giving you a higher wage and they vote down making it to where stuff is cheaper. And those are your working class heroes. Those are the people that if you live in a state like Texas or um, even here like Alabama, you're going to be like, yeah, that's who I want to represent me as they're voting against my interest. Because like I said, these people with their giant check that they receive every year from being a member of Congress and taking all their bribes, they don't have to worry about paying 100 for some medicine. You're never going to see them having to choose between paying a bill or paying for medicine. So they're completely fine with it being the price it is. It's always going to be affordable for them. But that's why I said this is so screwed up because they voted a way that is not congruent to what actual people need. But because most people don't pay attention to this stuff as much as I personally think that they should, they get away with it. And of course, they always have their Stockholm syndrome supporters where they're like, well, we don't want lower drug prices, or they just tell you that that was a vote they disagreed with and get over it. I said, isn't it sad that people are more protective of politicians than they are of their own, like their own community? Like they'll have their senator vote down lowering drug prices, and they'll spend more time trying to defend the honor of this random person that happens to be their senator than they will like explaining or taking the side of people who can't afford this crap. It's really sad. I remember this one guy when the Yemen conflict was going on, and it got to a point where basically all of the Democrats were for getting out of the war, or at least ending American involvement there, I should say. And it was a majority of and there were some Democrats that did this at one point, but there was a majority of the Republicans that voted to stay in the conflict or to like vote down a resolution to withdraw our support for Saudi Arabia. And I mentioned this on Twitter, and this guy was like, well, almost all the Republicans voted for it. Don't blame one man for a war. I'm like, I was talking about Cruz had voted for it. It's like, what kind of ridiculous argument is that? Imagine if me and 40 plus other people all took turns running somebody over. And when they put me in front of court and they say, this man ran this person over, I go, well, I did run them over, but there were 40 plus people that did it too. Don't blame one man for running someone over. It's like, but you still did it. You still played a part in it. When you could have done something to play a role in ending it, you chose not to. That's why I said I may disagree with the two of them on a lot of domestic issues, but I'll always have a tiny bit of respect for Rand and for Mike Lee because They have actual foreign policy beliefs that cause them to vote against members of their own party. And I respect that. Even if they're people that I don't always agree with. Um, I like politicians where they have a very core set of beliefs and you can count on them to always vote one way or always, act in one way and not, none of this snake stuff where it's like, well, sometimes I'll vote like this. Other times I'll vote like that. I hate that so much. But that's why I said I just feel like a lot of them are these like snake oil salesmen. Like, they go around, they waggle their finger, they tell you that you're supposed to support them in some election, and then when after the election's over, they never try to get you on board with anything they're doing. I said before, if I were a member of the House, the main place I would push for single payer is on the statewide level, because Newsom is known to have done some pretty dirty stuff to get out of his commitment to it. And I think if you organize enough people around putting pressure on the governor, the state legislator, these different corporations, you can enact a lot of change in 2 years. You can get people higher wages. You can get unions at a much stronger position than they were before you entered office. That's why I said that so much of it is doable, but you just have these politicians that they go along, they get along. They don't stand for anything. They don't have any like desire or policy ambition that they're trying to enact. It's always let me sit here for 2 years, sign on to some bills that don't really do much of anything. They're not really controversial, except to people that already are not going to be on my side. And then I'll probably, run for my next term and hope to do more of that, and just kind of stay here forever. As for if that person stays on that seat for my congressional district, they're going to just sit there for the next excuse me, 6, 16, 26 years, just going along to get along. And it's all so sad, man. There's like people just they don't even care. But I said before that when I try to be optimistic, I say, and I really believe this, the reason why these bastards win is because most people don't even know about what's going on. Like I am fully convinced if I go in that district with its 700,000 people and I ask them, hey, who is your representative? Almost nobody would know. You go up in some convenience store, you ask who's your representative, they don't know. You knock on the door, hey, who's your representative? They don't know. And they don't not know because they're stupid. They don't know because um, you have a parliamentary system, I guess you can say an electoral system that doesn't encourage voters to know who their elected officials are, know what their positions are. I said before that presidential elections get so much coverage, but then statewide and congressional ones go completely underreported. And that's really sad, because I think people, if there was, if there was more coverage given to this stuff, you could see a change. And I think if a candidate goes around and talks to the people and there's a concentrated effort to expand the electorate and get more people to vote than ever before in that district, I think there can be a really big difference. I said before, I'm someone who is negative leaning a lot of times when it comes to this because I've had so many elections where I thought it was going to go one way and then went the other. But I'm also someone who, I can see the bright side of certain things. I can look at something and go, okay, well, maybe this didn't go the way I wanted exactly, but we still had, 5%, 10% of what we wanted. That's usually the kind of thing I prefer. Yeah, I do. I like the darker inflection. That's why I said whenever because I'm thinking of doing this video on what this commentator said about Williamson. But whenever I see someone talk about fame and notoriety and all, it's like all of this stuff is subjective. It's all relative. It's nebulous, you know, and all of it can be changed. I mean, if I, for example, made a video on who's an underrated historical figure, let me think of civil rights movement, on Ralph Abernathy, and it's this big hour-long documentary on his whole life because I did get his autobiography. But if I do this big video on his whole life, it's got research, information, etc., and that video gets 100,000 views, 500,000 views, a million views. Now suddenly, people who didn't know who he was are more likely to not to know who he is because of the video went viral. Um, and I've played a part in keeping his legacy as an ongoing thing. If I go and knock on doors or go to schools and go, hey, there people always talk about King, but there was this other historical figure, Abernathy, that was his right hand man that people have completely forgotten. You would see people now being made aware of who he was. Uh, and if 100,000 people go out and talk about who he is to the various people that they know and have these discussions with and whatnot, then you would see even more people who know who he is. So fame is something that can literally change overnight, but it can only change in a quick amount of time if people pull together and they act as a concentrated group and have a concentrated effort to get people to know who someone is. That's the only way it can change. Outside of that, it's not really that doable. Like I know I as a singular person can go in my district and knock on doors and say I'm running for this, da, 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 but you still have to have someone else there who is able to talk about you without you being there. Um, which is why I said that like a lot of these news organizations, they don't talk about historical figures. I read Sanders' new book. It's okay to be angry about capitalism, and he has a part in there about Eugene Debs and how he goes completely undiscussed by corporate media. It's like that's not a coincidence. They don't want you to know who that person was. The blackout continues. They have certain people that they don't reference or mention on purpose. It's not illegal to not talk about someone, but it is a purposeful thing that they do to keep us in the dark about various either people and the positions that they were associated with. Which is why I said all of it just feels so disingenuous. That's why I said it's sad that people like sit here and act like fame isn't something that's determined by other people. This person is trailing the other person by 70 points. Like, yeah, we're a year away from the actual election and nobody knows who they are. What do you expect? But you let them tell it, and everyone knows who this person is, but they just so strongly reject their positions. Like, no, they don't. In fact, most of the time when they get mentioned, you don't even talk about their positions. So many people are just tricksters, man. They sit there and they make it sound like any of this stuff is even remotely even. But yeah, guys, this should be my last stream in Alabama. Uh, it's been a somewhat enjoyable trip. I've liked going to the various monuments and historical sites, and maybe at some other point I'll do something like this again. There's other states I'd like to see at some point, but probably not anytime soon because I don't want to turn into the plain man. So I'm gonna get off of here. Stomach is hurting. Have a good rest of your day.